The courtroom doors would soon decide his fate. But hours earlier, he was kneeling in the rain, holding the hand of a trembling woman he thought was a stranger. He didn't know she was the judge who would soon hold his life, his freedom, and his future in her hands. Rain poured relentlessly over the dimly lit street as Arman hurried home, his mind heavier than the storm clouds above him. Tomorrow was his court hearing, the day that would decide whether he was a criminal or simply a victim of circumstance. Accused of theft at the warehouse where he worked, he had lost everything: his job, his dignity, and almost his hope. Only his ailing mother believed in his innocence, her fragile voice always whispering, "Kindness never loses its way back to you." As he turned the corner, he noticed a woman collapsed near the bus stop, soaked and shivering. People walked past, avoiding eye contact, pretending they hadn't seen her. Arman hesitated only for a second before rushing toward her. "Can you hear me?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. Her lips trembled, her voice weak. "I slipped. My leg hurts." Without thinking about his own troubles, Arman removed his jacket and wrapped it around his shoulders. He helped her sit up carefully, ignoring the rain soaking through his clothes. In that moment, his fear about the courtroom faded. All that mattered was the fragile stranger who needed help. He didn't know that this simple act of kindness would soon return to him in the most unexpected and life-changing way. Arman supported the woman as they slowly moved toward a nearby pharmacy that still had its lights on. Each step she took was cautious, her hand gripping his arm as if afraid to fall again. Despite the storm and the chaos in his mind, Arman remained patient, speaking softly to reassure her. "You should get that leg checked," he said, his voice filled with quiet concern. "It might be more serious than it looks." She looked at him, studying his face with surprising attentiveness. "You're kind, especially for someone who looks like he carries a heavy burden," she replied. Arman forced a faint smile. "Everyone carries something. Some just hide it better." Inside the pharmacy, he bought pain relief spray and bandages with the little money he had left, money he had planned to save for court-related expenses. As he knelt to wrap her ankle, memories of caring for his own mother surfaced, reminding him that compassion was never a loss, even when life felt unfair. The woman watched silently, her eyes softening. "What's your name?" she asked. "Arman." She paused, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you, Arman. Not everyone stops these days." He shrugged gently. Maybe they are too busy fighting their own battles. He still had no idea that the woman he was helping would soon be the one judging his most difficult battle yet. When the rain softened to a drizzle, Arman insisted on calling a taxi for her. She resisted at first, saying she would manage, but he shook his head firmly. "No one should walk alone when they are hurt," he said, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. As they waited, she asked quietly, "What's troubling you, Arman? You don't look like a man at peace." He hesitated. Normally, he wouldn't share his struggles with strangers, but something about her calm presence felt strangely comforting. "Tomorrow is my hearing," he admitted. "I'm accused of stealing from the company I worked for. I didn't do it, but evidence was planted against me." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in deep thought. "And yet, you still stopped to help a stranger on the street." He gave a tired smile. "If I lose my kindness, then I really will lose everything." The taxi arrived, headlights cutting through the damp night air. As he helped her into the car, she held his hand for a brief moment. "No matter what happens tomorrow, don't let the world change your heart," she said softly that he nodded, unaware that her words carried a weight far greater than simple gratitude. The taxi drove away, leaving Arman standing alone in the quiet street, feeling oddly lighter despite the storm awaiting him in the morning. That night, Arman barely slept. His mother coughed weakly in the next room, and every sound reminded him how much depended on the court's decision. If he was found guilty, he wouldn't just lose his freedom. He would leave her alone in a world that had already taken too much from them. He replayed the incident at the warehouse repeatedly in his mind. The missing cash, the accusing glances, the security footage that somehow pointed only toward him. No one had listened when he tried to explain. His manager, once friendly, had looked away. Colleagues avoided him as if guilt were contagious. Yet, amid all the anxiety, the image of the injured woman returned to his thoughts. Her grateful eyes, her gentle words, the strange calm he had felt while helping her. For a brief moment, he wondered why that encounter felt more significant than it should have. His mother called out weakly, and he rushed to his side, offering water and reassurance. "Everything will be okay," he said, though fear gripped his chest tightly. She smiled faintly. "You did something kind today, didn't you?" Arman blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "A mother's heart always knows," she whispered. "Kindness is a way of finding its way back, even when justice seems blind." He didn't realize how true those words would become within hours. The next morning, the courthouse loomed before him like a mountain he wasn't sure he could climb. Its tall pillars and cold marble floors felt intimidating, each step echoing with finality. Arman's palms were damp as he entered, his lawyer greeting him with a serious expression that offered little comfort. "Stay calm," the lawyer advised. "We'll do our best, but the evidence is strong." Arman nodded silently, though his heart pounded in his ears. As he sat on the bench outside the courtroom, he looked around at the crowd, faces filled with anxiety, anger, and silent prayers. Everyone here was waiting for judgment, just like him. Suddenly, the courtroom doors opened. A hush fell over the corridor as people stood respectfully. Arman rose as well, barely paying attention at first. But then his breath caught in his throat. Walking toward the judge's bench was the same woman he had helped in the rain. Her posture was strong now, her presence authoritative, her eyes calm yet observant. Gone was the fragile stranger from the street. In her place stood the judge who would decide his fate. Their eyes met for a brief, silent moment of recognition. And in that instant, Arman realized that the kindness he had shown a stranger had unknowingly reached the very person who now held his future in her hands. Arman's heart pounded violently as he stood frozen, staring at the judge. The same eyes that had looked at him with vulnerability in the rain now held calm authority. Framed by dignity and composure for a brief second, he wondered if he was imagining things. But the memory was too clear. The trembling voice, the injured leg, the taxi disappearing into the storm. The judge took her seat, her expression professional, unreadable. No hint of recognition crossed her face. Arman swallowed hard, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. Would she remember him? And if she did, would it matter? The courtroom proceedings began, voices echoing through the hall, but Arman barely heard them, his thoughts tangled with fear and hope. He had helped her without knowing who she was. It hadn't been a calculated act. It had been simple, human compassion. His lawyer leaned closer. "Focus, Arman. This is your chance." He nodded, trying to steady his breathing. Across the room, the judge reviewed the files before her, flipping through pages that held the story of his alleged crime. To her, this was just another case. Yet to him, it was his entire life on trial. And deep inside, he wondered, did destiny bring their paths together that rainy night, or was it simply kindness returning to witness the truth? The prosecutor began outlining the charges with cold precision. The accused, Arman Khan, is charged with embezzlement of company funds, supported by surveillance footage and financial discrepancies. Each word felt like a hammer striking his chest. Arman clenched his fists, resisting the urge to protest. He had tried explaining countless times that he was innocent, that someone had used his access card, but no one had listened. Evidence spoke louder than truth in the world he lived in. The judge listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Arman. Her gaze was steady, analytical, but somewhere beneath it lay a quiet softness he couldn't fully interpret. She asked a few questions, her tone firm yet respectful, ensuring every detail was clarified. When Arman's lawyer rose to defend him, he spoke of Arman's clean record, his years of honest work, and his dedication to supporting his ill mother. "This man has nothing but his integrity," he argued, "and yet, that integrity is now questioned by circumstantial evidence." Arman felt tears sting his eyes but blinked them away. He couldn't afford to break now. As the judge listened, a faint memory flickered in her mind. The young man kneeling in the rain, wrapping a jacket around a stranger's shoulders without hesitation. She pushed the thought aside, reminding herself that justice must remain impartial. Yet, Something about him felt deeply familiar and quietly unforgettable. The court recessed briefly, and Arman sat silently, staring at the floor. Doubt crept into his heart like a slow poison. What if kindness didn't matter here? What if truth wasn't enough? The system wasn't built on emotions. It was built on proof. His lawyer placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll challenge the footage. It's not as clear as they claim. Arman nodded faintly, but his thoughts drifted back to the judge. He wondered if she had recognized him and simply chosen not to show it. Maybe that was better. He didn't want sympathy. He wanted fairness. Still, the thought that she knew his character, even briefly, gave him a fragile thread of hope. Across the hall, the judge stood alone near the window, gazing at the courtyard below. Rainwater still glistened on the pavement, reminding her of the night before. She replayed the moment in her mind. His gentle voice, the way he had spent his own money without hesitation, the sincerity in his eyes. She closed her eyes briefly. Justice must be blind, she whispered to herself. Yet, a quiet voice inside her added, but truth often reveals itself through the heart. As she returned to the courtroom, her mind carried both the weight of law and the memory of unexpected kindness. When the session resumed, Arman was called to the witness stand. His legs felt heavy, but he walked forward with quiet determination. Sworn in, he faced the courtroom, aware that every eye was judging him even before the verdict was spoken. "Did you take the money from the warehouse account?" the prosecutor asked sharply. "No," Arman replied firmly, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I've never stolen anything in my life." The prosecutor presented the footage, showing a figure using Arman's access card near the restricted area. Murmurs spread across the room. Arman's chest tightened as he watched the grainy video. The figure wore a cap, face unclear, but the timestamp matched his shift hours. "That's not me," he insisted quietly. "My card was missing that day. I reported it, but no one followed up." The judge leaned forward slightly. "Do you have any proof of reporting the missing card?" Arman hesitated. "Only a verbal report to my supervisor." The courtroom buzzed with skepticism. Without written proof, his words seemed weak against the digital evidence. Yet, as he spoke, the judge studied his expression carefully. She wasn't just listening to his words. She was observing the sincerity in his voice, the quiet dignity in his posture. She had seen countless guilty faces over the years, and something about this man felt profoundly different. As the hearing continued, the defense requested a closer forensic analysis of the footage, arguing that the figure's height and build slightly differed from Arman's. The judge approved the request, her voice calm and authoritative. It was a small decision, procedural on the surface, but to Arman, it felt like a door opening in a wall that had seemed impenetrable. During a brief pause, their eyes met again. This time, recognition flickered clearly in hers. She didn't smile, didn't nod, but her gaze softened for a fraction of a second, an unspoken acknowledgement of that rainy night. Arman looked away quickly, conflicted. He didn't want her to favor him because of kindness. He wanted the truth to stand on its own. Still, the knowledge that she knew who he truly was, a man who helped a stranger without expecting anything, gave him courage he hadn't felt in weeks. The judge turned her attention back to the files, her mind balancing law and humanity with careful precision. She knew that justice required neutrality, yet she also understood that character often revealed itself in moments when no one was watching. And Arman's character, she realized, had revealed itself long before he ever stepped into her courtroom. The forensic expert was called to analyze the surveillance footage in greater detail. The courtroom fell silent as the video played again on a larger screen, zoomed and enhanced frame by frame. Arman watched nervously, his heart pounding with each passing second. The figure in the footage moved with a slight limp, something he had never had. His breath caught, hope flickering cautiously inside him. The expert cleared his throat. Upon closer inspection, the individual appears slightly taller than the accused and displays a gait inconsistent with his medical and employment records. A murmur spread across the room. Arman's lawyer quickly seized the moment, pointing out discrepancies in timestamps and access logs that suggested his card might have been used by someone else. The judge listened carefully, her fingers lightly resting on the desk. The memory of that rainy night resurfaced again, the sincerity in Arman's voice, the selfless urgency with which he had helped her. Yet she remained composed, reminding herself that compassion could guide, perception, but evidence must guide judgment. Arman lowered his gaze, whispering a silent prayer for the first time since the accusation. The truth seemed to be finding a voice of its own. Fragile yet determined to be heard, the prosecution, sensing their case weakening, shifted tactics. They suggested that Arman might have collaborated with another employee, implying that kindness and good character could be a disguise. The accusation stung deeply, but Arman remained silent, choosing dignity over anger. His lawyer objected firmly. Speculation cannot replace evidence, he argued. This man has lived a life of responsibility, caring for his ill mother and working tirelessly. There is no history of misconduct, no motive strong enough to risk everything. The judge observed Arman closely as he stood there, shoulders tense yet eyes honest. She had seen arrogance, deception, and calculated lies many times in her courtroom. But what she saw in him now was different, a quiet resilience, a sadness born from injustice rather than guilt. Inside, she felt a subtle shift. Justice was not just about punishing wrongdoing. It was about protecting the innocent from being crushed by flawed assumptions. Arman finally spoke, voice steady but emotional. I may be poor, and I may be powerless, but I have never stolen. The only thing I have ever tried to give freely is kindness. His words lingered in the air, simple yet profound, touching hearts beyond legal arguments and evidence charts. The courtroom grew heavier with emotion as Arman's statement settled into silence. Even the spectators, initially indifferent, began to see him not as a case number but as a human being fighting for his dignity. The judge adjusted her glasses, carefully reviewing every document once more, as if searching for detail previously overlooked. During a short recess, she retreated to her chambers, closing the door gently behind her. The image of Arman helping her in the rain replayed vividly in her mind. His soaked clothes, his trembling yet compassionate voice, the way he spent his last money without hesitation. It hadn't been an act for recognition. He hadn't even known who she was. She sat down slowly, reflecting on the delicate balance between law and humanity. Justice demanded neutrality, but truth often revealed itself through character, through actions performed when no reward was expected. Meanwhile, Arman sat alone outside, staring at his hands. He wondered if kindness had any place in a world driven by suspicion and evidence. Had he been foolish to believe goodness would protect him? Yet, deep inside, he still felt that doing the right thing could never truly be wrong, even if the world misunderstood it. When the session resumed, the defense presented a final piece of evidence, a maintenance report showing that Arman's access card system had malfunctioned that week, making duplication possible. The document had been overlooked earlier due to administrative negligence. The revelation shifted the atmosphere instantly. The prosecutor struggled to counter, offering only speculative theories. The judge's expression remained composed, but her mind was already connecting the fragments, the faulty system, the mismatched gate in the footage, and the unwavering sincerity in Arman's testimony. She asked calmly, "Was any internal investigation conducted regarding this malfunction?" The company representative hesitated. "No formal investigation, Your Honor." That hesitation spoke louder than any argument. Arman felt his breath tremble as hope blossomed cautiously within him. Yet he remained humble, not celebrating prematurely. He had learned that life often tested patience just when victory seemed nigh. The judge looked at him again, this time not as the woman he had helped, but as a guardian of justice evaluating truth. And in that quiet moment, she realized something profound. Kindness had not influenced her judgment. It had only revealed the authenticity of a man who had nothing to hide. The courtroom prepared for the final arguments. Arman's lawyer spoke passionately about systemic flaws, human error, and the danger of assuming guilt without complete investigation. Justice, he concluded, must protect the innocent with the same intensity it punishes the guilty. The prosecutor's closing remarks were shorter now, less confident, relying mostly on the initial suspicion rather than solid proof. The shift in tone was noticeable to everyone present. Arman stood silently, heart pounding but mind strangely calm. He had done everything he could, spoken the truth, remained patient, and trusted that honesty would eventually find light. Whatever happened next, he knew he had not compromised his character. The judge announced a short recess before delivering the verdict. As she rose, her eyes briefly met Arman's once more. This time, there was unmistakable recognition, but also something deeper, respect. Arman lowered his gaze, overwhelmed by emotion. He didn't expect favoritism. He didn't even expect mercy. All he wanted was fairness. And as the courtroom emptied into anxious whispers and restless footsteps, the air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a decision that would determine not just a legal outcome, but the faith of a kind-hearted man in the justice of the world. The courtroom slowly filled again, each person returning to their seat with tense anticipation. Arman's hands trembled slightly as he stood, his eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Every second felt stretched, heavy with uncertainty. He thought of his mother waiting anxiously at home, her fragile hope resting entirely on this moment. The judge entered, her expression calm yet firm. The murmurs faded instantly into silence. She arranged the files before her with deliberate care, as if acknowledging the gravity of every word she was about to speak. Arman swallowed hard, bracing himself for either relief or heartbreak. After reviewing all presented evidence, she began, her voice steady and authoritative. The court acknowledges discrepancies in the surveillance footage and the possibility of unauthorized access due to a malfunctioning system. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Arman's chest tightened as he listened, hardly daring to breathe. She continued, "Justice requires certainty, not assumption. In the absence of conclusive proof, this court cannot declare the accused guilty based on flawed evidence alone." For a moment, Arman's mind went blank. The words echoed in his ears, fragile yet powerful, as if they were breaking chains he had been silently carrying for weeks. Hope, once faint and distant, now stood clearly before him, real, tangible, and life-changing. The judge paused briefly, allowing the weight of a statement to settle across the courtroom. Arman felt his knees weaken, but he remained standing, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile miracle unfolding before him. Therefore, she continued, "This court finds Arman Khan not guilty of the charges brought against him." Gasps filled the room. Arman closed his eyes, tears spilling freely down his cheeks. The suffocating fear that had consumed him for weeks dissolved into overwhelming relief. His lawyer placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, whispering softly, "You're free." But the judge wasn't finished yet. She added, "This case also highlights the importance of thorough internal investigations before accusing an employee. False assumptions can destroy lives, reputations, and families." Her words carried both legal authority and deep human understanding. Arman sensed that she wasn't just delivering a verdict. She was delivering a message about compassion and responsibility. As the gavel struck, the finality of the decision echoed like a heartbeat of justice. Arman felt as though the heavy storm cloud over his life had finally broken, letting sunlight stream through after a long, merciless darkness. Outside the courtroom, Arman stood quietly, absorbing the reality of his freedom. The world seemed brighter, sounds sharper, and even the air felt lighter in his lungs. He thanked his lawyer sincerely, his voice still trembling with emotion. As he turned to leave, he heard a calm voice behind him, "Mr. Arman." He stopped, heart racing, and turned around. The judge stood a few steps away, now without the intimidating presence of the bench between them. She looked at him not just as a judge, but as the woman he had helped on that rainy night. "You didn't know who I was," she said softly, "yet you chose kindness over indifference." Arman lowered his gaze respectfully. "I didn't do it for recognition. I just couldn't walk past someone in pain." A faint smile touched her lips. "That is precisely why your character spoke louder than the accusations against you. Justice must rely on evidence, but humanity often reveals truth in unexpected ways." He felt humbled, not proud. "I only did what anyone should do." She shook her head gently. "Sadly, not everyone does." In that brief exchange, Arman realized that kindness had not influenced her judgment, but it had helped her see the sincerity in his soul more clearly. When Arman returned home, his mother was waiting anxiously by the door, her eyes filled with silent prayers. The moment she saw his tearful smile, she understood everything without a single word. She rushed forward, embracing him tightly, as if afraid he might disappear again. "It's over, Amy," he whispered, voice breaking. "I am free." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she cupped his face. "I told you, kindness always finds its way back." They sat together, sharing the story of the courtroom, the evidence, and finally the truth that had saved him. But when he mentioned the judge being the same woman he had helped in the rain, his mother closed her eyes thoughtfully. "Life has strange ways of testing our hearts," she said softly. You helped her without expecting anything. That is pure goodness. And goodness never truly goes unnoticed by the universe. Arman reflected on her words, realizing that while the law had declared him innocent, it was his compassion that had preserved his dignity throughout the ordeal. He had faced humiliation, fear, and doubt, yet he had never allowed bitterness to replace kindness. That realization filled him with a quiet strength far greater than the relief of being proven innocent. Days later, Arman returned to the same street where he had first met the injured woman. The sky was clear now, sunlight warming the pavement that once held puddles and uncertainty. He stood near the bus stop, reflecting on how a single moment of compassion had intertwined his life with destiny in ways he could never have imagined. He realized that kindness is never truly a small act. It travels silently through time, touching hearts, shaping perceptions, and sometimes returning when we need it the most. He hadn't helped her to gain favor, nor had he expected that she would one day hold his fate in her hands. Yet life had woven their paths together with quiet purpose. Looking up at the bright sky, he felt a renewed sense of faith, not just in justice, but in humanity itself. His struggles had taught him that even when the world feels harsh and unfair, compassion remains a powerful force capable of changing outcomes and healing wounds. He walked away slowly, not as a man defined by accusations, but as someone strengthened by truth, patience, and unwavering kindness. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness becomes the turning point of our destiny. Even when life feels unjust, compassion leaves silent footprints that return when we need the most. If this story touched your heart, subscribe, like, and join our Heart Angels family.